Guibh Galera Cordia August Foil Road. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary, Clare's Wish Foundation in Limerick, and Deel Animal Rescue in Limerick, in West Limerick, actually. And my lovely guest today, I've heard so much about her, I thought I'd never have her on and quick enough, and that's Sue Theron from Johannesburg in South Africa. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Mary. Lovely to be chatting to you at last. I've been looking forward to this since last year when we first communicated.
Yeah, and I don't know what actually happened that you came back and you said yes, absolutely, and some way along the line, life happened. And I realized, oh gosh, I hadn't made a date with Susan. So I better get on to you. But Sue, Dr. John Culnan, the famous Dr. John Culnan, botanist, Irish dance historian extraordinaire, told me all about you. He said, you really have to have Sue on. That you had made a remarkable contribution to Irish dancing in South Africa. You set Irish dancing up in South Africa, didn't you?
Yes, I wasn't the only one teaching Irish dancing. I fit into a group of Highland dance teachers, qualified Highland teachers, and we've always done a little bit of Irish dancing in our syllabus, and something that was passed on through the generations. Going back to the 1930s, I think, there'd always been a little bit of Irish, mostly done at our Stetfords, worn in kilts, normal hard shoes, although we would be doing soft shoe dancing. And I only first started dancing when I was 12, Highland dancing, and our teachers used to introduce us to the Irish twice a year, normally at the beginning of the year and the end of the year when we weren't quite so busy. And I just fell in love with it immediately. I loved the rhythm, I loved the music, I just loved the dancing. And at that stage, I wanted to learn more. And I said, how can there only be 4 dancers? We did a reel, a single jig, a hornpipe, and a 4-hand reel, but a 4-hand reel in hard shoe, which also fascinated Dr. John. And nobody could answer that question.
I never saw a hornpipe or a 4-hand in hard shoes.
Yes, there's a 4-hand in hard shoe, and I think it came from New Zealand or somewhere like that. Dr. John would know a bit more. It fascinated him, and I think one of our teachers gave him a video of that. Anyway, so I learned this Irish and dutifully did it. And then a couple of years passed, and I was a member of the Scottish Official Board of Highland Dancing in South Africa. And the teacher started regurgitating the Irish, so to speak. We'd acquired tapes from Colin Dunn and Olive Hurley, quite a lot of Olive Hurley's videotapes. Started experimenting in our classes, and the Highland dancers loved it. We got all our Highland dancers learning. And the Scottish board at the time was quite interested in working a little bit with the Irish dancing and incorporating it. But I thought at that stage, no, I really think this has to be an organization on its own, because it's such a beautiful form of dancing, and I'm sure it's going to have a great following. And I think it needed its own organization dedicated entirely to itself. And I had just said to everyone, well, I'd really like to set something up. Would my colleagues support me in creating an organization in the country? And of course, there was unanimous approval and support. And everybody said, yes, they'd love to do it. And they'd love us to do something like this. So the birth of our organization happened in around about 97, end of 97, the beginning of 98.
So it's very young.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is very young, but I think we've accomplished a great deal in that time.
Huge. I've seen the standard of your dancers online, and I've seen
yes.
And it's astonishing. It's really a testament to the children's determination, one, to practice, and the parents, the teachers, and all of you that to actually encourage that ethic of hard work and that ethic of constantly learning and wanting to learn. That's very important for
Yes,
any.
exactly. And I think because we had already had a professional qualification in dance and something as structured and disciplined as Highland dancing, we had been through the years of grade exams as dancers ourselves. We had done teachers' exams, and there are various different levels of teachers' exams in Highland dancing. Other than the Highland dancing, which would be your sword, your Highland fling, your chartreuse, and your reels, which is with 4 dancers. We also have the national dancing, which will cover Scottish lilt, blue bonnets, Flora MacDonald's fancy, and that is a different costume. We then have sailor's hornpipe, various levels of exams in that dance, the Irish washerwoman jig. So we had quite a lot of different forms of dancing within the Highland dancing. So we had, as children, done a lot of exams in those 4 different disciplines which fall under the Highland dancing umbrella. And then the teacher's exams. You would get an associate exam, which would be some of your work, and then a members, then a fellow. So we've been through a structure, so to speak. So we'd all learned, I think, the discipline and focus that does go into accomplishing things and becoming a good dancer. Doesn't
Yeah,
just happen.
I'm thinking that, sorry for interrupting, what you're suggesting sounds very like to me like the Royal Academy exams, or in my case, I did the Victoria College of Music exams in London. So you do all the grades, and then the diploma and the associate diploma, the teaching diploma, and then you can do the gold, silver, and bronze medals in between. And they're all structured exams that you have to do, whether it's drama or whether it's mime, or whether it's reading or prose. There's different sections. So it strikes me as something similar to that you had in place for
Yes,
dancing.
yes.
At what point did you realize that you were going to need outside help, and if you like to get you off the ground, such that you needed people, say, like Olive and like Colin? Do you know?
I
Because
think fairly early, a lot of us learned a treble reel as one of our first dances because I think that was off his videotape. And of course, we loved that. And having had a bit of hard shoe dancing in our washerwoman jig, we did have the understanding of what we would call a shuffle, your treble or your batter. So we did have a good understanding of rhythm and beating. So a lot of us picked that up, and that would have been the first dance we learned, which is quite tricky when you think about it.
eh,
And then some of the Olive Hurley dancing. But Kaylee was a little bit confusing, I think, in the beginning because there were so many different things. And I think we realized quite early on that we would need the help. And I think because we came from a professional background, we knew the value of a proper professional qualification and
that's hard
represent
work, and
and
the value
represent
work.
representing an organization honestly, not claiming to have a qualification we didn't have. So I decided to contact the commission and just to let them know who we were, what tapes we'd been working from, what our qualifications were at the time, and that we would like their assistance in helping us do this correctly and possibly going through levels of examination. And I was very surprised. I had a reply back within about 4 hours. It was Seamus McAnilla at the time who replied.
Oh,
I
I
think
loved
this was
Seamus. He was just the most. I'll tell you, when I did my TCRG, no, not my TC, my ADCRG exam, and I met Seamus, right from the very get-go, I loved the man. He was just so gentle, and he made you feel so much at ease. And and it's a very stressful exam. Um, and anyone that'll actually make you, and as it happens, John Culnan was on my panel when I passed, and I always say to John, you're my favorite person in Irish dancing, because he passed me in the exam. But
yes,
it's just when people are nice to you when you're
yes,
doing an exam, that means a whole, even if you never pass, the experience you have with the people that are examining you, the sense that you know that they're trying for you to do your best rather than for you to fail, that means so, and you understand that from all aspects of your professional life, how important it is to make people feel like you want them to do well.
Yes, exactly. That is obviously very important, because that is what you are as a teacher. You won't always have a champion, and you'll often have a dancer who's a legger, as people would say, or someone that will really never accomplish great heights. But I think it's important for them to feel happy and feel confident about what they can do, and that they each reach a level that they're comfortable with, and that they need the praise all along the way.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
And you know something, I think sometimes a little praise does go a long way, because you can have a child who's battered and bruised in life with emotional problems, worrying about what others think about them and feeling secluded. But when they have a teacher who makes them feel important, their
Yes.
whole can turn around.
Yes, you never know what goes on in their life, and what they're coping with at home. So when they come to dancing, it needs to be a positive environment, a constructive environment, and a nurturing environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because I mean, sometimes children will connect more with their teacher or a stranger than they will with their own family, because they might be able to talk to their own family. But if their teacher is kind to them, your teacher, in many respects, you see them as much, if not more, than your own family, because you're going to classes every week, maybe 3-4 times a week, and you're with them at weekends at the competition. So you're seeing them
Yes.
as your own family.
Oh,
So
you do.
it should be positive.
Yes, most certainly. Your pupils do become part of your family, most definitely. You see them very often. They're starting at the age of 4 or 5, and they're still with you when they're 18. And very often, as I'm finding now, when they're finishing their studies, they're coming back. Or I've started getting adults coming back to dance. And the one came in the other day and said to me, "Susan, do you realize that I was last here 18 years ago?" And I thought, oh wow, I really have been teaching for quite a while now. Because I don't think of myself as an old person, because I think and I'm not an old person, but I don't think of myself as the age I am, because I'm working with children all the time. So it hadn't occurred to me that 20 odd years ago I was teaching Irish dancing to young children, and now they're adults and they still have a love for it.
But isn't that lovely when you can look back on your time and say to yourself that the children that came through your class, they may not have been champions at dancing, but they became champions of life
Yes.
because of what you meant to them, because you had some little, which may have seemed little to you, but it was a massive impact on their lives. Because your teacher can, if you're going in a direction, and your teacher can send you one way when you might be going another way. And that can be negative or positive.
Yes.
And it's very important that the teacher child relationship goes in the correct direction for them, rather than you can get completely lost through life. And if you have a good teacher, it's amazing how many people realize that their lives were impacted so much by good teachers, as well as by bad teachers.
Oh, most definitely. And I'm always very cognizant of the fact that a little life is precious, and a person's life is precious, and especially when the child is very young, they're like unmodeled clay. And what you do with it makes a huge difference to them in the rest of their lives. So you have to be ever aware of how you put things across, and how you say things to them, and how you encourage them. And the balance between encouraging the work, which may not be that great, and getting the best out of them, and getting them to work a little bit harder. And I enjoy that, and I enjoy the challenge of finding a way that works for everyone, because you can't always teach a 1 to 3 in the same way to every child. There are different ways to get the message across.
Yes, and some children just some children have shorter attention spans than others, and so it doesn't mean they're any less bright. My teacher in school used to say to my mother, Maura, Mary could be very, very bright if she stopped looking out the window and counting the leaves on the trees. But I was taking in what they were saying, but I was still just making steps up under the table because dancing was everything to me. But I do remember I suppose my best teacher in school was my English teacher. And I always say that she was the woman that actually made me go down the route of English literature eventually. Mightn't have been when I left school. It took years for me to actually go back and do English literature. But she's the one guiding light in all of that. But I remember writing about how we all come into this world like blank sheets of paper.
Yep.
And it's what's typed onto those and spilt onto that sheet of paper over time that changes it from this clear white unaffected sheet of paper to this muddled mess. And
yes.
it's very important that what goes onto that sheet of paper is positive and neat and organized and structured so that it doesn't become cluttered with all mess. And the way I look on childhood, how important we are just blank sheets of paper when we come into this world, and we're formed, our lives are formed by the people we meet along the way, and we can just hope that we're a positive impact on them.
Most definitely. So I also have a love for English. I had the most amazing English teacher in senior school. She came into class, we all had desks in a row, one behind the other like normal. And she said, no, this won't do at all. I have to change this. So she put all our desks in a U shape. And she said, now this is my area. I need my stage. And she was just brilliant. The language spoke to you and it made you love whatever she was teaching. And she made such an impression. And she was amazing. She had the gift of just sharing that love and passion of what she taught.
So important. I remember Mary Jackman, and I always like to mention her. She became a senator later on in our lower government, but she with Fine Gael, which would be well, they're partly in power now today, but she was just an amazing woman. She just I suppose I was the type of child that I wanted to be praised, being an only child. And, you didn't get too much praise from the nuns. They were nice, but they didn't. And Mary Jackman would always say, Mary has a flow of eloquence. And Mary, when she answers a question in English, I always know I'm going to get an unusual perspective on the poem that I didn't think of. And straight away, your shoulders would, I can still remember the feeling of, maybe I'm not stupid after all, do you know?
Yes.
That you might feel because, because of the way you are, that's your nature. But you'd feel this sense of importance that I can achieve anything when your teacher makes a positive comment about you. Do you know? Because I used to getting letters home saying Mary needs to work harder on maths. And that it was great when I'd get a positive comment on English.
Very good. Yeah, makes a big difference.
But when you contacted the commission and they said, and I presume John went out shortly afterwards to you.
Yes, well, they contacted me and were delighted to hear from me. And when I spoke to them, they said I would need to find a TCRG closest to us. They'd love to support us, but I needed to find a TCRG close to us who could possibly help us. So then I went on my search and contacted the commission again. I don't know who I would have spoken to. I think I did make a phone call. And I found out that our closest teacher was somebody called Maria Cunningham in Nairobi in Kenya. Oh. She was an ex-Connaught dancer. So I thought, oh, well, give me her contact details and I'll get hold of her. So I made contact with her, told her who we were, what we wanted to do, would she be prepared to come to South Africa and teach us. And she said, yes, she'd be delighted to do so. And she let me know when she'd be available. And I went back to the board meeting at the Scottish board meeting at the time. And I said to the teachers, right, I have this person, she's available to come. Her air flight would cost X amount. She can stay with me. She can travel the country to the different centers. And we have so many people, whether it was 50 or whatever it was at the time, or 100 people. I said, if we all paid a registration of 50 Rand, that would cover the airfare. I don't even know if we paid her anything. I don't even remember that far back. I think we maybe just covered our airfare and brought her out.
If we all paid registration of
50 Rand at the time, 50 Rand, and that was like 20 years ago. That was enough.
I thought you said 50 grand. I thought.
Oh no, Rand. The South African currency of 50 Rand at the time, that would be enough to cover her air flight, and she was willing to come. I think she was here for a week or two. It was quite long. And she worked so hard. I mean, she took us from the little reel that we knew. I think by the time she'd gone, we'd learned to reel in a light jig and a single jig and a slip jig and a heavy jig and a St. Patrick's Day. I mean, our minds were just boggling. We had children, teachers all learning together. I think we learned Shoe the Donkey and a couple of other fun things. And then I spoke to her afterwards and I said, you know, what do we do if we want to qualify and do this properly? And are there exams and stuff like that? Well, I had actually found out at the time that the TCRG exam you could do, and you didn't need any grade exams at that stage. And I thought that was a bit strange because I'd been through a system where you had to do various grades before you were eligible to do teacher's exam. And I thought that was very strange, how there were no exams and then you did this huge exam. And then she was the one who said to me, contact Dr. John Cullinan. He is the one that's very involved with the grades and he would be the one to speak to. So that was then my next step. And of course, I got such an encouraging, positive, excited 3-page email from Dr. John. And I remember one of his little sayings at the end of his letter was, big oaks from little acorns grow.
That's so true.
And that's so typically true. And he came out then in the next year. Maria came out in February 1998 to do the first of our workshops. I then made contact with Dr. John. He came out in 99 and she came again. And then I think he traveled up to Nairobi to spend time with her. And Dr. John came for a year or so after that. And then he very quickly said to us, you know, you need teachers that are up to date and currently teaching that can give you the structure. And I went through to the Munsters. My daughter and I went through to the Munsters, I think in 2000.
That's my
and I met Maya and Maria Walsh, because Dr. John had referred us to them. They had expressed an interest. So I went and met them. And I think the next year is when they came out for the first time. And so the country developed under their expertise and guidance. Because then having gone to the Munsters, I couldn't understand. I thought, how do the dancers get to this level? How do they do what they're doing on the stage? The music was different to what we were dancing to, because obviously it was all the advanced work and we were still on our beginner level. And I thought, how do you become good? How do you go from a beginner to that? How does that happen? So Maya and Maria were the ones that gave us the structure.
But sorry for interrupting you there. That's a very important moment in your dancing and in your competition or in your creative lives, really, because there's a moment where, and I see it with a lot of children and parents, that they're teaching them the beginners dances. Then they go to a fesh and they see everybody who are dancing a lot longer, maybe doing more advanced dancing, and they think, oh, I've got to go to that school now to do those dances, and I've got to leave the teacher I'm with. And they don't realize that those teachers who are teaching the advanced dancers also have children at the same level as this. And you have to start, as John said, from tall oaks grow from little acorns. You have to have that strong structure, that strong tradition within the dancing. in order for you to progress as an advanced dancer, you have to have the good basics. And I think a lot
totally.
to jump past the basics and get the advanced steps because they see river dance and they see Lord of the Dance.
I totally agree with that, and I think the structure we were given and taught from Maya and Maria has been absolutely invaluable and something we can be immensely grateful for, because we stuck to them as teachers for a very, very long time. Some of us would still work with them now, and one or two others have gone their own way for whatever reason, but they stuck with us for a very long time, and they gave us that structure. They took us up to different levels. They took us through those levels, and I'm a firm believer in you needing that structure, and you do need those levels, because you can't suddenly go onto rocks and entrechats and all the other names that you're given for all these difficult movements, because your body, your mind, your skill has to develop with it. So you can't expect to reach those heights until you are ready for it physically.
You have to develop, because people tend to forget that, especially children, their muscles are still growing. And if they're doing, and the steps, it's the same with ballet. You start with just the light little pumps before you ever get into blocks.
Yep.
And you don't just get into blocks and start doing toe work and doing difficult steps. Before you have to creep before you can walk. And I did my TC with Maya. Maya and I did our TC. We got it the same year. And Michael Deel from America. I can still remember.
That's very interesting. Yes, because Maya also trained us well. We were an award and associate status. Dr. John came out for a few years, and our children did grades. And he had a plan in mind. He obviously had worked with Australia, and he knew how it worked. Yeah. He made all of us dance. We went up to about a grade 5, I think. He made us all dance for him in an exam session, one by one, as teachers of the country. So we had to dance for him through all those grades, from grade 1 through to grade 5, and we did the dances. And I think when we did St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick's Day, if we did anything else, he made us do the set on the right and the left as well, not just on the right as the kids do now. So he made us dance all that and made representation to the commission, and put in the same system we had in Australia, where those of us teaching as pioneers were given a status as an associate teacher. So we had permission to carry on teaching, but obviously that teaching was for this country only. And a lot of us decided, no, we actually wanted to get the full qualification. A lot of people thought we were mad. Why would we want to do this? But I think South Africans naturally are quite competitive people. They're quite driven. And a lot of us thought, no, we don't want to feel second best, second rated. We actually want to get the qualification. Because, and the first exams in this country were in 2007. And incidentally, that was also the same year that our first qualifiers went to Worlds. So we also needed to feel we were the same as the other teachers around the world. That we weren't.
That was very young, because I did my AD the following year, 2000 ADCRG 2008.
Oh goodness!
It's not very long ago that you did the full registration, if you like, to become.
No, not that long ago. So we had our first pre-com mortis in the country in 2005. And then in 2006, we had our first qualifiers, because Maya had said, come, it's time now to start doing this for your children. So we had our first children actually qualifying to go to Worlds before we ourselves had become full-on TC. So it was quite a momentous year. And when I think about it now, I don't actually know how we managed to do it, because we did our championships, a 3-day championship over the weekend. Would have been September. We always have it at the end of September because it coincides with the school holidays around the country. And after our championships, we then did our TC exam. So we had a grueling 3 or 4 day exam, And at the time, I remember it rained. Sunny South Africa, it rained. We had Richard Griffin, Fidelma Davis,
Oh,
and
poor
yeah,
Fidel.
and Maury Duffy
No, you
in
know
South Africa.
poor Fidelma.
Fidelma. So we had them for that exam, and it was a tough exam, and it rained that whole weekend. I mean, they must have wondered what was the sunny South Africa they came to. So
Yeah,
it's amazing. We ran the championships. The exam was organized. We did the whole exam, and most of us were not young adults. I myself was 46. And there were, I think, 2 teachers older than me, 2 candidates older than me, and then a string kind of younger than me. So doing a TC at the age of 46 is no mean feat. Because really, I mean, we hadn't danced at that level with that level of dancing all our lives. We were just learning the work and teaching as we were going, learning and teaching and having workshops. So as we were learning, we were teaching. So that was quite something to do, I have to say. That was quite a challenge for us, but many of us were successful.
Do you attribute that determination? Do you think that determination on your part, you say it's a South African trait. I don't know if it's entirely, yes, I'm sure it is absolutely a South African trait, but I also think, I find that I'm very much like that. I can't do something unless I have the exam or the qualification. I mean, there are people who can teach anything for years and they're very successful and they don't have the qualifications behind them, but they're very good at what they do and they're very competent and they're very self-assured and very confident. I'm not that type of person. I would feel that if I was to teach something, no matter what it was, I would have to go and do the exams and put myself through, and I could never do anything in my life that didn't have an exam or a competition associated with it, that you either could see that you either won or didn't win, or that you passed or didn't pass, that you had something to aim at. Do you think that that's something that you're born with, rather than that's something that's cultural? I don't think it's cultural. I think you're born with.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Are you born with that, or is it your environment that creates that in you? I think people are born with certain traits like that, and other times you are developed to be that kind of person. You can have 3 children in the same family, and each child can be different.
Yeah.
So how does one work out how much is what you're born with and how much is what you've brought up with? So it's interesting. That is an interesting thought.
Nature or nurture?
Yes.
Nature versus nurture. I think with me, when I look at my dad, he was very laid back. He was so laid back, he was probably horizontal. Nothing worried him. And then my mom was the other extreme. She
Yes.
was very proactive about everything. So I think, whereas I'm very like him, I'm very like him when it comes to pushing myself to achieve or to get an exam or to do an exam, to see a result. And I wouldn't have, like you, I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I really wouldn't have felt comfortable with associate. For me, I'd have said to myself, like you did, I want to be a fully fledged member of uncommissioned.
Yes.
It's phenomenal to be an associate, but if that's as far as you want to go, but I would be pushing myself as well, like you.
Yeah, it's fine. There were some people that were happy with that, and that was what they wanted, and they're not treated any differently. We treat them exactly the same in this country. We're all treated absolutely equally. Nobody's any better than anybody else. We're all teaching the same thing and often drawing from the same pool. But you have to make your own personal choices in life. And for me, that was something I really wanted. Not everybody wanted it. Some did. Not everybody was successful with the exam, but we did have a pretty good pass rate. I don't remember the pass rate at the time, but we had exceptionally good results in our music and our theory paper. A lot of our papers, the candidates had well into the 90s. And I think that was quite a significant thing that people noticed overseas.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot for the people we are, but also it's the person you are yourself. I'm very much the person that is driven by achieving a goal. I think it's important to have a plan. If you have a plan, no matter what that plan is, you know what to work for. You have your channel cut out for you. You have your plan. I don't think you can just come into class and teach willy-nilly. I think you need to have a plan for every child, whether it means that child by the end of the year is going to be able to do a dance with music or balance on one leg or manage this or manage that. I think every child's goal is different. And I think as a teacher, it's quite important to look at each child and see, okay, what can we do? Where can we be in a few months' time? And what is my goal for you? You don't put the stress on the child, but you think, what is achievable in this child? What can I do with this child? And children surprise you. You sometimes, as you would know if you did teach, you can have a child with all the talent in the world. Doesn't mean they're going to make anything of it, because they are often the disappointing ones.
Absolutely.
Because they don't learn to work. They get it so easily, it comes naturally, where the little struggler often has learned the value of hard work and becomes your champion. And also, talking about a teacher, having that piece of paper doesn't make you a good teacher. Being a champion doesn't make you a good teacher. Everybody knows that. I think you have to have a love for what you do, and you have to have a love for the people you work with. You have to like people.
And oceans of patience.
Oh, yes.
And patience with yourself as well. It teaches you a lot about yourself. I think standing inside in a class with a group of children and you have a child who's exceptional, you see the talent just oozing from them, and they would warm themselves, as my mum would say. They wouldn't work to warm themselves. Then you have another child in the corner and you say, if only I had that child, if only both children, I could take the best qualities from both children, I'd have one really great champion. But there is a saying that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Very, very much so. And another one I love is it's 90% attitude and 10% aptitude.
There's another one, 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So many good sayings.
But they are true. I mean, when you look at my favorite dancer of all times, Mikhail Baryshnikov, and when you look at the work ethic that he has gone through daily, and his feet, how twisted they are from dancing. I mean, they're just grossly deformed. And you look at the hard work and the dedication and the pain and the years of suffering he's going to have in later life because of I mean, training methods have changed an awful lot since,
yes.
Even amongst ballet dancers who would absolutely and utterly trained in how to best benefit their bodies when they're doing things. They would have always been, but even now more so. And it's the same in Irish dancing. Have you seen a huge change in the way dancers look after their bodies? I mean, when I was in competition, God, you'd never warm up. You'd practice your steps down the back before you'd go on stage, but there was no such thing as sitting down and doing warm-ups and cool-downs. And
there's very definitely a big difference now. I mean, I probably was the laziest dancer when it came to warming up. I worked very hard in class. I was driven. I wanted to do certain things and win certain things. But I never spent much time warming up because I thought, I'll be too exhausted to perform by then. I'll go and dance and just get up there and dance. And I never had an injury, which was amazing. I've had more injuries as a teacher.
And never had an injury either.
Coming out of a teacher's exam with an injury, coming out of an AD exam with an injury. I never had injuries as a dancer, but I never warmed up and trained. But, they are dancing today and training at a far higher level than I think we would have. And they are putting their bodies through so much punishment. You have to have cross training. You have to eat properly. You can't do all those movements and things naturally. I mean, dancing is really quite unnatural to the body when you think about it. So you have to.
In Irish dancing is in a sense because everything has to be held upright and the knees have to be so straight, whereas in ballet, the knees have to be bent. You land on bends, whereas in Irish dancing you land on straight knees, for the most part. And then the heavy shoes make it even more difficult for, especially if you're small. I mean,
Yes.
Anyone my size, I'm only 4'10", and a size 2 in a shoe. And I used to hate the heavy shoes. I have to say, I used to hate putting them on. I used to look at Celine Hession, and and you'd see her on TV with these light little shoes and a high heel, and she was dancing, and I used to say, they'd look lighter now to dance in, but of course we were children. There's no way we'd be allowed in a heel. But that height Celine used to wear, so. But Olive Hurley is an absolute inspiration.
Yes, those tapes, I have them all. Those tapes were very, very helpful, for learning the Cayley and seeing it visually, because I think you need a visual for learning. If I want to remember something, if I have a visual, I will remember it far better.
Yeah. I think we're very much the same. I think now that we all have these mobile phones and you can video everything, and if you have somebody out to do work inside in your class, you can video what they're doing, and it makes it so much easier because you can just put it on again and you can say, oh, that's what you meant. But before you had videos and things like that, it was very difficult. You had to write everything down.
Yes.
And I tend to teach by words, like a step would be hop 1 2 hop back, hop 1 2 hop back, hop treble, hop front, hop 1 2 back. And I know that I write it in the code, so I know it, but I prefer to have a mobile phone that you can actually record it.
Yes, in the beginning, I must say, we tried to write everything because in Highland we have a textbook because we have set steps. So you can't choreograph your Highland. You have certain steps, and there are a lot of steps. You would do a 6-step dance, and you'd have a first step and a last step, which have to appear first and last, and a whole combination in between. And the book tells you where to put your foot on what count, what height, at what angle, and that's what it is. You don't deviate from that. You can't put in your own style. No, you have to have it like that. So it's very, very technical. And everything has a name. Like what you do on one leg, it's a hop or a spring, and everything's got terminology. So when you read a Highland textbook, it takes quite a while to get through a step because everything's written and it can be quite cumbersome. So when we started learning the Irish, we were trying to write it. And a 1 2 3 and a 1 2 3 4 and an up 1 2 and a skip and an up 2 3 or whatever. It makes perfect sense in a workshop. But the next day you'd look at the paper and think, what does that mean? So, and that's how we first started. So that was quite a way to try and learn. And we've definitely improved since then. And we can see something, look at it, copy it. Our children are at the stage where they can watch somebody do something, they can hear the pattern and repeat it. They don't try and break it down. We would say, oh, sorry, hold on there. Did you do a little hop before you change feet, Dr. John? It was quite a thing for him at the beginning. He would say, just do it, just dance. And we were trying to work out what actually went into that, what foot was doing what. So that was our early beginning in Irish dancing. But now, of course, it's very different. We've had children traveling overseas, we've had children competing overseas, and they're the ones that will take it even further because they're always on Instagram. They're always looking at what the champions are doing. So, it's such a living form of dance.
Isn't it great that Irish dancing has made a village out of a world? It's made brought everyone together that such that I can be speaking to you in South Africa, and I'm here. You're my second South African, as I was telling you off camera, that I've spoken to in 2 days. And a neighbor of mine actually is living in Johannesburg now. He's been living for years in Johannesburg. His twin sisters live directly across the road from me. But he's been in Johannesburg for many, many years. But isn't it amazing that, Irish dancing, we're a small little island with less than, 4 million people in the country, north and south. And yet, such is our impact on the world that we have spread to South Africa and other countries like China and Japan and the Arab Emirates and everywhere that there's an Irish person. Was your background Irish? I'm just thinking that the Eisteddfod, that's a very Welsh name, and there's an Eisteddfod always in Wales. My father's people were Welsh. And I'm wondering where the Welsh connection came in with the Eisteddfod and where Ireland came. Was it just that you fell in love with the dancing?
I don't know where it came in South Africa itself. We still have our Eisteddfods here, and children participate in our Eisteddfods for drama, for singing, for so many things, so many different types of dancing. For myself, I always wanted to dance. My parents couldn't afford to send us to dance lessons and things like that. I had a little friend who did ballet, and I used to watch her mother making her costumes and making the wigs and doing all these things. And I so wanted to dance, but it just wasn't something that was going to happen. And then I lived in Grahamstown at the time. My parents moved to Grahamstown. We lived in Grahamstown, and I went to a school there, and a Highland dance teacher came to the school and started teaching. And I just happened to stumble into the school hall one day, and I watched a group of children dancing. And I thought, well, I looked at what they were doing, and I thought, I'm sure I can do this. And I just went up to the teacher and I introduced myself and I said, my name is Susan and I'd like to dance, and my sister would like to dance too. Can you please tell me more about it? And then I went home to my mom and I told her so excitedly, I said, Mommy, she comes to the school, I can dance, you don't have to take us. And she said, I can dance barefoot. We don't even need shoes, Mommy. Please, can I start? So that's how I started dancing, and my sister danced. And I never had fancy costumes in the beginning. We used to patch our shoes. I don't think people patch shoes today. The shoes, you make a hole, they throw them away. We'd patch our shoes. They used to buy old velvet dresses in second-hand shops to make our costumes, make our jackets, because in Highland you have a velvet jacket. So I never started with very fancy beginnings, and I wasn't transported here and there and everywhere because somebody came to the school. And my mom said, yes, she obviously knew down the line there would be costumes, there would be cost and all that sort of thing, but she let me dance. And I do have a Scottish background. That's not why I went to Scottish dancing. It was just some form of dancing that somebody was doing. And she also taught tap, so I started with a little bit of tap, but then I didn't carry on with that. I thought I want to get good at the one first, so I'll just do the Highlands. And then we moved to Port Elizabeth, and I had another teacher there, and that's when I started with a bit of the Irish. I only came to Joburg as a working girl. I still hadn't finished doing my exams. So as a working girl, I was doing my grade exams, so to speak, in Highland. So I only qualified as a Highland teacher at the age of 23, and I did my second Highland teacher's exam after I'd had 2 children. So there I was strapping on the kilt across this post-baby body and doing the next dance exam, because we still had to dance for our exams then. So it wasn't just a given. I didn't start like everybody else as a young person. I didn't have a mom and dad who drove me to classes, who bought me every pair of shoes and that sort of thing. I paid for some of my own costumes. I sewed for some of my own costumes. So I really did want to dance. I really, really wanted to dance. And I think that's one thing that drives me as a teacher quite significantly is if a child wants to dance and they can't afford to dance, I will find a way to let them dance. Because
I always said that too. If I had a child who couldn't afford to dance and was good, I wasn't going to ever stop them and I'd do as much as I could to help buy their costumes. I didn't realize it was going to be probably one of my first dancers that I ever had, who actually was really, really good. But the family it was financially difficult for them. And
Yes.
but never regret it. And I always feel that it's important, because at the end of the day, it's only a costume, and it's only,
Yes.
only a piece of fabric. But the impact that you have, the longevity of the impact beyond the fabric, beyond the costume, is priceless. You know,
It is, and I think there are so many people that are needy today.
even if they never become a good dancer, it's the connection that they've made with somebody beyond their own family.
Yes,
Um,
and I think there are a lot of teachers around the world that do sponsor a lot of children. I think there's a lot of it, and there's probably more and more of it. And I think since COVID, even more, you want to keep your dancers dancing. You don't want them to stop. So I think it's something that most dance teachers do.
yeah.
I know there's a lot of that here. There's a lot of help given to children here.
And there are people who think, when you look at these, I don't know, do you watch? I mean, I stopped years ago. I used to be FES registrar for the Munster Council, and I'd go on the VOI board to put up everyone's FES details, the parents. And when I saw the stuff that was written on it by some, I just, you couldn't justify even putting a FES details up. But you have some people who are of the opinion that teachers are just making so much money out of dancing, and they have no concept of how, if teachers for the most part, either it's their livelihood or it's their second income, and they're spending their entire weekends teaching the children at FEShes free of charge, at the back of a hall, giving private tuition and sitting with them all day long at a FES, probably going without their dinner because they have so many children up on the stage, and they have to watch them all and give them equal time. And I don't think some people realize just how much teachers dedicate their lives to someone else's child.
Yeah, they don't realize. You do have some parents who realize and are grateful. You do have parents who'll always say thank you. Thank you for teaching my child, or a child that'll come into class, greet you, say thank you after every lesson. But you get some that don't see the value of what you do. And your hours are endless. I mean, if you don't run a studio where you employ workers, I mean, a lot of people do everything themselves, and I like the more hands-on approach. Even my husband says to me, why are you spending so much time at the computer? Why are you doing so much admin? I'm sure you're finding things to do, but I'm not. There is always so much to do.
So much. And at the end of the day, I suppose many teachers are business people as well. They have that business acumen. I was never one of those people. I mean, I was the type of a person, and it's just my nature. People could come in and say to me, look, I don't have the money this week. My husband lost his job, or blah, blah, blah. And can I give it to you after the summer? They'd always do. They always would. But you're there and you're thinking, God, how am I going to pay for I have to pay for the hall and pay for the petrol to get out, but I can't tell them that I've got to pay for everything now, because you don't want to make them feel any worse. And nobody realizes, when you see people talking on these boards about, oh, the teachers are making a packet out of dancing, and my child is this and my child is that. I just kind of feel like if you don't want to, if you don't, you understand that dancing is going to cost for to have a teacher. If you want to go into competition, you have to have a costume. You have to have the wig. You have to, if you want to take it seriously. In the same way as you'd have tennis, and you'd have to have all the gear, or you'd have to have the gear for everyone at a top level. But if you can't afford it, then you should say to your teacher, look, I can't afford for them to be going into competition. I just want them in it for a hobby. And, I think all teachers are just fantastic. They just dedicate their entire lives to someone else's child in most cases.
Yep, That's true. But even if they dance socially or to do it, they need something to work for. So it's always good for them to have some sort of goal.
Well, it could be a show. It could be
Yes,
performance. It could be a nice Stedford, or whatever. It doesn't have to be. And not every child is able to take criticism either,
no,
because it's not taught to them at home. I mean,
yes,
I was you know, you were told going up on stage. Now, if you make a mistake, don't cry, or if you don't get first, don't cry, because I'll
yes,
kill you when I get you home if you cry. So you were
yes, exactly.
used to criticism, and anyone who went to the nuns was very used to criticism.
Oh, goodness.
But I don't think children are able as much, unless they've grown up in competition, to take criticism
Yes,
as they were in our days.
that's good. I think it's very good for children to learn to win and lose, and they need to understand that someone will always be better, someone may always be richer or poorer, and it's something you need to accept. And children will often say when they haven't won, what did I do wrong? Or the parent will say, she danced so well, but what did she do wrong? And you have to say to them, she didn't do anything wrong. It is what the judge is looking for. It
On
is
that,
an opinion. It's not a science. It's not a running race. There's no finish line. There are different things. And if the child would concentrate on the correction in class and just correct what we are giving in class, that's all they need to do. You know?
so where to now for you? I mean, Brenda Springer was out with you as well.
Yes, she came out and adjudicated for us. We've had quite a lot of lovely adjudicators out over the years.
I always had bracelet envy when I used to watch Brenda's bracelet, because she got the bracelet when she was out in South Africa with 3 kind of medals on it, and she wears it all the time. I don't think I've ever seen Brenda without that bracelet on her. And it's she told me she got it in South Africa, and every time I see the bracelet on her wrist, I think she got that, you know, how beautiful it is. But she got it when she was out judging for you. She's out in South Africa. But where do you think now that you're going to go with it?
In
From,
South Africa, as a country,
yeah,
well, we'll hopefully carry on becoming better and better and keeping our dancers up where we can keep them as close to what is happening overseas. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge number of dancers here, so we don't have a lot of different competition at the different competitions. The children are dancing very often against the same people each time they dance.
yeah.
And not everybody can afford to go overseas and have access to that level of competition. But we will keep working and keep making sure that we keep our choreography up to date and we keep our children trained. And I think what's important to keep growing the professionals in this country. We did have a second TCRG exam in 2015, and so we did qualify another batch of teachers, and I like to think of them as our homegrown TCs, where the first lot of us as TCs trained them, obviously also with Maya's help. I have managed to do my AD, and I have my AD.
I was going to ask you,
Yes,
apart from you have your AD, but apart from you,
yes.
would you be the only AD in the country, or are there more?
No, at the moment I'm the only one, but we do have a number training, and we are hoping to have another professional exam. We would have had one probably last year if it hadn't been for COVID, and now we are working towards getting the next batch. We have another lot of TCs training and ADs. So our homegrown TCs are now going to be ready to do their AD.
So the
And
future is great for South African Irish
what?
dancing. The
Sorry,
future is great for Irish dancing in South Africa.
I didn't hear that question properly.
So the future is great for Irish dancing in South Africa.
Yes, I think the sooner we get more people qualified, the sooner we can break away and create more studios in satellite studios in more places, because we don't have enough at the moment. We do need to grow it. It is too small, and it's not like it's a cultural tradition. We have a lot of Irish people dancing, and they love the fact that children can dance. We have a lot of people from different walks of life dancing. They're not all Irish or have Irish descent, so it's very multicultural.
That makes it all the better.
Yes, we have children of different color dancing. We have Indian children dancing. We have people from many different cultures doing Irish dancing. It really seems to be attractive to a lot of people. It's really.
It's the rhythm. The rhythm is reflective of the heartbeat, and I mean, when you breathe and when you dance, you're at one with your heart, with the rhythm of your heart. So any cultures that have a tradition of dance where there's a rhythm in the dance, like the African rhythm, would be very, very spontaneous towards Irish dancing, very embracing.
Definitely the rhythm and the beat and the variety of the dancing and the happiness of the dancing, because the tunes are generally happy tunes and lively tunes.
You know what they say about the Irish? Our music was happy, and our songs were happy, and our wars were happy, and our songs were sad.
Oh dear, I hadn't heard that.
Our songs are all ballads, and they're all well, they're not all, but we're famous for our ballads in this country. But our wars were always happy occasions, in the sense that people were all gung ho, and they were out for that's what they say anyway. They were always out for comradeship and being part of the group, and fighting for justice and fighting for rights. But when it came to our music, they're always ballads and sean-nós, the old music and that.
Yes.
But then when it comes to Irish dancing, the music is so lively. And so
it's very lively. I love the music. I really do. And it's lovely to have so many different tunes.
Yeah.
So you don't have one tune dedicated to one dance other than in your sets, but it's lovely to have a choice.
Variety, and there's some great musicians involved in the dancing now. It's just
definitely.
We're blessed and spoiled in Irish dancing with the amount of musicians. And
yes, and I think what's lovely, what I like in the Irish dancing, is the fact that the tradition is preserved, in that you have your ceilidh dancing, and that's a good tradition to keep. And then you also have your solo dancing, where the sky's the limit when you get to those advanced sections. And it's lovely to work within the structure of the technique that you need, but to be able to choreograph and to have the freedom to choreograph and create. I think it's a wonderful balance to have.
Absolutely. Well, Susan, we got through it, and it was so easy to talk to you. You were so easygoing to talk to, so relaxed. I can't let you go without asking you, is there any relationship with Charlene?
No, unfortunately there isn't. We sometimes joke and say, oh, Charlene's my cousin. No, there isn't. And I don't think, or I believe from my brother who's done our family tree, that I don't think he's found any Irish blood. We definitely have the Scottish heritage. We had family that came out here in the 1800s from Aberdeenshire. But I said to him, we have to look. There's got to be some Irish there somewhere. I can't have this passion. There has to be some Irish blood somewhere.
You know what they say about the Scottish? They're only Irish people who could swim.
Irish people who?
Could swim.
Oh, I didn't hear that either.
The people that could actually swim from Ireland over to Scotland.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
No, that's another saying. A Scot is because there's so many Irish in Scotland. We're Celts after all. We're
yes,
by our Celtic blood.
Well, that's why my studio is called the Duncan Studio of Celtic Dance, because I teach the Highland and the Irish. Now I just need to learn a bit about the Welsh clogging. That would be interesting.
I'll get you some information. I'll send it on to you.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I send you on some information. My grandmother was from Pontypridd in the Rhondda Valley in South Wales, and
Yes.
she was Welsh till the day she died, even though she lived in England for 50 years, over 50 years. She was like, her heart was in Wales. You know, it never left the Rhondda Valley. But I was going to say Charlene. So thank you very much for being my guest on today's show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was lovely to chat.
It was lovely to chat to you too. It's always lovely, particularly to talk to an icon of this dance, who's the foundress, one of the foundresses of Irish dance in South Africa.
Well, thank you for that. It's just an absolute passion of mine, and it just never occurred to me that people wouldn't like this type of dancing and that we wouldn't be able to establish an association. I just could not imagine anybody not liking this dancing.
I can't either.
I don't think I've ever come across someone who doesn't like it.
I don't either. I don't. My dad was English, and God love him. He used to write home to his mother all the time, our Mary, and he was so proud I was involved in Irish dancing. He knew nothing about it, but he loved it. Do you know?
It is lovely.
It was the rhythm.
It is.
That he was Welsh and he had an Irish father, and there was that Celtic. I think it's the beat of the Celt. Do you know that us all? But well, thank you anyway again, Sue.
Thank you. Lovely to chat to you, and I'll be sure to tune in and watch a lot of your chats.
Oh, I'll send them to you. Well, Shindera Lesh on Clare, that's the end of the show for today. Until the next time, Lacuna Day. Bawalum to Galer, Chicona, Sonas August Gra, August Gade, Ship Sloan. Sloan, Sue. Bye bye.
Sloan, thank you. Bye bye.